Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about food waste. Did you know that each week the average family of 4 produces 36 pounds of food waste? 36 pounds every week. And about half of that goes into landfills. That's 19 million tons in the US alone. But as you know, there's a lot of interest and a lot of pressure these days to live greener lives, to design and build greener homes, restaurants, and institutions, to be environmentally responsible. You might be surprised to learn how much of an impact people can have simply by the way they handle their food waste. I'll demonstrate by using this. Throughout this program, I'll show you what happens when an apple is disposed of 3 different ways: in a landfill, in a compost pile, and down a food waste disposer. And as the apple makes its way down each path, you'll learn what's being said about adding food waste to a landfill, why composting is a good option, but it may not be practical for everyone everywhere. And though there's no silver bullet, when viewed holistically, you'll see how disposers can be an important part of a waste management program that's both practical and environmentally responsible by sending food waste to a wastewater treatment plant. We've been throwing away food waste like this for as long as humans have existed. So what's another apple? Well, take a look at what happens when we toss it in the trash. To begin with, this garbage might sit in the trash for a few days and start to smell, generating odor and bacteria. Then, when you take it out to the sidewalk or into the alley, it can attract vermin. Finally, the truck that takes it away emits diesel fumes into the atmosphere all the way to the landfill. Some garbage is transported by truck hundreds of miles, releasing carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide into the air. But not all waste that's hauled away is transported to landfills. In some municipalities, trucks take the food waste to be incinerated. Incineration accounts for about 13% of all waste disposal. Food waste is 70% water, so it takes more energy to burn it than the waste itself contains. An uncontrolled incineration can release harmful emissions like nitrogen and sulfur oxide. But let's get back to what happens when food waste arrives at the landfill. When food waste is buried in a landfill, it begins to decompose and generates a greenhouse gas called methane. Many experts agree that methane is a major contributor to global warming. Now, it's possible to capture methane gas and reuse it as energy. But food waste decomposes so quickly, it's challenging to capture the methane, and not all landfills are set up to do it. Plus, logistically, it's hard to capture the methane that escapes through the soil here. In addition to releasing methane into the air, decomposing food waste at a landfill can pose another problem. Remember we said that food waste is 70% water. The food waste liquefies when it decomposes. In a landfill, that liquid can mix with metals and other materials in the landfill and create a toxic liquid called leachate. When left unchecked, the leachate can contaminate groundwater, and in many cases, it ends up being pumped to the wastewater treatment plant.
My name is Peter Duck. I'm from Banff, Alberta, in the heart of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. I'm the Towards Zero Waste Coordinator for the Bow Valley Waste Management Commission. We're very concerned about landfills because of the environmental problems they create on site, the leachate, odors, and so forth. But we're also concerned about the gases they emit, primarily the powerful greenhouse gas methane. We're surrounded by majestic mountains with glaciers that are melting away very fast. And so the climate change problem is something that's in the forefront of the minds of the residents in our communities, and they want to reduce their influence on that process. We find food waste disposers, or garburator as we say in Canada, are a good alternative for handling food waste because it avoids the need to transport heavy food waste, food scraps, long distances to bury them in a landfill where they are out of sight and out of mind, but not necessarily out of the ecosystem.
So, for reasons both on the ground and in the air, food waste and landfills aren't a great combination. Trucks carrying food waste to landfills burn fuel and generate diesel emissions. And at the landfill, the waste creates methane and leachate. The landfill is not the best place to discard food waste. It's hard to argue with the environmental benefits of composting. You'll see for yourself when this hits the compost bin. Out here, composting organic materials like food waste makes a lot of sense. Pile up your food waste, leaves, grass clippings, anything that's organic. Carefully layer it, regularly water it, turn it, and eventually bugs and worms break it down and turn it into a rich soil called compost. The trouble is, with composting you can't put everything into a compost pile. Meat and dairy products can create odors in a compost pile and they can attract vermin. Composting also requires space and labor to tend the pile and to avoid the release of methane into the air and leachate into the ground. Colder temperatures can inhibit compost culture activation. And for those who live in high-rise buildings, well, composting is a challenge. Some municipalities collect kitchen and organic waste using what's called a green bin, but that requires transportation, meaning the burning of fuel and emissions when transporting the waste to a central disposition site.
My name is Dan Noble. I'm Executive Director of the Association of Compost Producers. Backyard composting is a good option for food scraps for people who have the space to do the composting, as well as who want to take the time and the energy and the attention it requires to manage a compost pile on an ongoing basis. If you don't manage your compost pile properly, a number of things can go wrong. And one of the main ones is that the pile can go anaerobic, meaning that you don't have sufficient oxygen feeding the compost pile, and as it goes anaerobic you produce methane gas. And methane gas is a very potent greenhouse gas, about 22 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Disposers work with backyard composters because you can take the animal byproduct materials like bones and milks and cheeses and allow them to go down the disposal while you keep the green waste in your compost pile. The animal byproducts are then treated properly in the sewage system at the wastewater treatment plant.
So, composting may not be practical for everyone everywhere. That's why food waste disposers are a nice complement or alternative to composting. Disposers can handle most food waste that composting can't, and disposers offer the convenience that many people want. Take this apple. If you put it down one of today's modern food waste disposers, it'll be pulverized into particles less than a quarter inch in size, which is great news, because discarding food waste in a disposer, then to an appropriate wastewater treatment plant, can be practical, convenient, and environmentally responsible. We're going to show you what happens when an apple is ground in a food waste disposer, how it flows to a modern wastewater treatment plant, where it can be used to generate energy, and where the solids left behind can be turned into fertilizer, how that fertilizer can be used in agriculture to grow more apples. And the cycle begins again. Let's take it from the beginning. In the appropriate situation, food waste ground into fine particles and flushed into your sewage system flows to a wastewater treatment facility. Fitting, since food scraps are about 70% water. Here, food waste doesn't have to be wasted at all.
My name is Kevin Schaefer. I'm Executive Director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District. Putting food waste into a wastewater stream is a win-win for the environment, for energy, for the sustainability movement. It allows us to take something that could go to a landfill and really use it for benefits for the entire region.
Let's take a look at what happens when wastewater reaches a modern treatment plant. As wastewater from homes and buildings first enters the treatment plant, screens and grates remove the large objects. From there, during its primary treatment, the wastewater enters large settling tanks. Here, grease and oil float to the top and are removed, and heavier materials sink to the bottom and are removed. The water then moves to a secondary treatment, where microscopic organisms or bugs are brought in. They break down whatever organic materials remain in the water. Finally, the water goes through disinfection before the water is discharged into rivers or lakes. Now, back to the role that food waste plays in this process at a modern wastewater treatment plant. When the heavy solid material or sludge is removed from the water in primary and secondary treatment, it's sent to something called a digester. Now, digesters are designed to break down the solids so that the volume of that material can be reduced. These digesters work in one of two ways. either through what's called aerobic digestion, which means it uses oxygen, or anaerobic digestion, which is without oxygen. It's important for you to know which process is used in your community. This modern wastewater treatment plant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, uses anaerobic digestion. These digesters don't use oxygen, so when the food waste in the solids is digested by the microorganisms, or bugs, they release a gas that's about 60% methane. Here, that gas is harnessed and used to generate heat and electricity at the plant.
So we're able to capture that methane gas and burn it and use it to produce energy. So we're actually reducing the energy needs of the region, and we save our taxpayers about $2 million a year.
Now, in cases where oxygen is used in the process, which is called aerobic digestion, methane is not produced. So the waste is reduced without the benefit of providing a renewable source of energy. In either case, however, we could still benefit from the second byproduct of the digestion process, the biosolids themselves. Which brings us to the next step in our circle. Those biosolids at the wastewater treatment facility can be converted into fertilizer and sent back to the land. This fertilizer is a better soil conditioner than the synthetic fertilizers that farmers might purchase.
At the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District, what we're able to do with those biosolids is produce a lawn fertilizer called Milorganite, Milwaukee Organic Nitrogen. It's a natural fertilizer that is safe for the environment, and it's a revenue stream for us as well. We can offset the cost of our process by selling this Milorganite as a lawn fertilizer. Milorganite really is looked to by the lawn industry. They really like this material because it's natural, and when it's natural, it has a slower breakdown than some of the more synthetic products might have.
And, of course, once the fertilizer is applied to agricultural land, a new crop begins to grow, and the cycle starts anew. The benefits of using food waste disposers are clear. Food waste sent through a disposer to a wastewater treatment plant can be converted into biosolids for use as fertilizer, and the methane generated during the process can be captured and used for energy. I hope we've helped you understand the impact this can have on the environment, and why adding food waste to a landfill has its limitations. Why composting is a great option, but isn't always practical for everyone everywhere, and why using a food waste disposer can be both practical and environmentally responsible, and may present the best option. One question you might have is about operation of the disposer. There are trade-offs with all waste management systems, and yes, you'll use water to run a disposer, but not much. For the average family on a given day, a food waste disposer uses about the same as a toilet flush per person, and about 1% or less of a household's water usage. And the electricity required to run a disposer for a typical family costs less than 50 cents a year, about what a single 100-watt light bulb uses over 3 days. Thanks for taking the time to learn about food waste disposers and the environment. Remember, when it comes to food waste, disposers can be both practical and environmentally responsible.